All right. How you doing there, guys? Welcome to the first ever episode of the Beer Talk Live. My name is Aaron Quinn. I will be one of your hosts, the least handsome host of the two. And with me, as always, will be Matt Carr, the more handsome of the two. How you doing tonight, Matt?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. So why don't we go ahead, since nobody knows what the heck we're doing here. We're not even totally sure what exactly it is that
we're figuring out as we go.
Doing here. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Matt? Tell us a little about you and why we should listen to you talk about beer.
Sure. Well, I don't know that you necessarily should listen to me talk about beer, but I'm going to talk anyway, so it'll be entertaining if nothing else. I co-founded an organization called Love of Beer, which is the name of our channel here, back a few years ago. It was kind of born out of a desire for a bunch of us to get together and drink good craft beer and talk about it a little bit and just enjoy each other's company. So we did that. We've done a few events and we do promotions, we do media, we do all kinds of cool stuff. And that's about it. We don't have a real strong focus at this point. It's a community project. We want people to be involved and just have a good time drinking good beer together.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been following you from a distance, so I know Matt. Matt and I've been business partners in the past, roommates, grew up through our adult lives together. Then I moved away to Buffalo, New York, so I'm here now. But I've been watching Matt do his thing there in Maine, which is a great beer community. The entire state's a great beer community, so he's doing great work. So if you get a chance, go on Instagram, follow Love of Beer. They got a Facebook page. Check them out there. They're doing some cool things. And as it continues to evolve, I think it's only going to get cooler. So unfortunately, I don't get to help out. Like I said, I'm out here in Buffalo. We also have a pretty good beer community, not nationally known, but we kind of like it that way. Some great beers out here. And so I'm just a regular beer geek, self-proclaimed beer geek. I'm a home brewer. I've worked in retail for beer stores. I've taught homebrew classes before. Not to toot my own horn, but I am a certified Cicerone server. I'm working on my certified Cicerone, which is not going so well, but I'll get there eventually. And just always trying to consume beer knowledge, everything beer culture. And so that's why I kind of approached Matt and said, hey, this is what you're doing. I love talking about beer, so let's get together and share our love of beer with the world. And what better venue to do that through than loveof.beer. So here we are. What are you drinking tonight, Matt?
I am drinking a beer actually that was released yesterday. It is made by Mass Landing Brewing Company here in Maine. They are out of Westbrook. This is a triple dry hopped Telltale Pale Ale. Telltale is, I believe, their flagship beer. They have a double dry hop, which is kind of a consistent produced beer here. But the triple dry hop they have released now for the second time. This one is with just Nelson hops. It is phenomenal. No bitterness, really light drinking. The first one I had was done with Galaxy, and we pounded that one in a few minutes before a concert. It was incredible. These guys are doing great work up here. You know, I think there's a ton of great breweries that are producing kind of hop forward beer in Maine in general. And there's just a ton of fairly good, but not anything that grabs your attention IPA. This kind of dry hop pale ale style is really cool. And I think these guys nail it. Stay on them. They're producing some really cool stuff.
And they're on night shift distribution now?
They are on night shift distribution. Yeah, they're getting down to Mass a little bit. This small batch stuff, they just did a collaboration with Vitamin C Brewing out of Mass too, who is not public yet, I don't think, but they are getting down into Mass with some of their more mainstream stuff. They produce a peanut butter stout that is phenomenal as well, and a few other great beers. So keep an eye on them. They're rising very, very quickly.
I've loved everything you sent me, and they're another great follow if you're on Instagram and you're looking for following beer companies. They're doing a great job marketing themselves. I love all their pictures. They make me very thirsty, so go check them out. That's Mass Landing, and I hope to have him on the show too, because he's got a pretty cool story of starting out of his garage, background in financial planning, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So pretty cool story there from Ian. I did bring his stout, the peanut butter stout that you mentioned. We do a pig roast every year up here. There's a bunch of guys that go to a local bottle shop And it's just a crew of people that love to hang out and share all the stuff we collect throughout the year. And I brought basically everything I had. I just cleared out my fridge, and I had 2 of the cans that you had sent me of the peanut butter stout.
Yep.
And I shared that. And even some of the people that weren't fans of all the beers we were sharing, all the exotic, extreme, you know, we all bring out the crazy stuff for each other.
Yeah.
But the people were passing it around, and everyone was like, dude, this is unbelievable. I waited till after dinner so they could have a little dessert, but people are like, how do I get it? Where do I get this stuff? So
yeah,
if you get a chance to trade with somebody and find that, you could probably hit Matt up on Instagram, and if you have something good, I'm sure he's willing to trade for and trade for something good. Always.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I know a couple guys, so
yeah,
we can absolutely send it out for you.
And so tonight, I'm not drinking anything totally crazy. Around here, you can get it almost at every store, every grocery store, but it's the Great Lakes Blackout Stout. It is a seasonal stout by Great Lakes out of Ohio. I love all their stuff. Matt is more of an IPA guy, and I tend to be a darker beer guy, and sometimes we meet in the middle and try some different stuff. But so this is great. I've actually had this sitting in my cellar. I got a nice little shelf in my cellar. It's the perfect temperature, and I had this sitting since 2016. So just kind of been looking for a good excuse to pop it. And hey, what better excuse than our first ever show to pop a 2016 Blackout Stout and try it out.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that. Hey, did you try it before you started aging it to get a comparison? Or
yeah, so I bought a 6-pack of it. In 2016, whatever. I had one that day. I've had them slowly. I think I brought you guys one when I came home one time.
Yeah, I think we did try that.
So what I'll usually do when it comes to the aging stuff is I'll try to buy, if it comes in 4s or 6s, I'll buy whatever quantity it comes in, all bottled on the same date. And I'm kind of geeky with it a little bit. I don't like people that are too much of beer snobs, but I do get a little geeky with the cellaring. I have a little book in my cellar, and I rip off pages and I say what date I got it, when I'm gonna taste it, like if this one's gonna sit for 6 months, this one's gonna sit for whatever, and then I'll document slight change, whatever I change. Sometimes it doesn't go well. I will say, if you are into cellaring beer, I opened one, I forget what it was, and it just didn't age well, and I popped it open. I was super excited about it. It was like 1.5 years old, and it tasted like soy sauce.
Oh.
It was disgusting.
Yeah. So it's an experiment. You know, I've been tinkering with sours a little bit too, and you know, I have some good ones where I think, this was really good when I opened it this time, but this could be junk in a couple of years.
Oh yeah. Some of those Bretts age nicely though. Well, let's get into our first topic here of the night, because it's one that I complain about a lot online. I complain about a lot to my friends, but unfortunately this weekend I'm a sucker too, and I'm actually going to sit outside in the cold Buffalo December weather.
Yeah, you are.
Around 6:30, 7 a.m. to get in line for the other half can release up here. We get a little bit of other half once in a while on tap, but we don't get cans. So I'm going to get in line with a friend of mine from Boston who's coming up. But I complain all the time, man. I tend to not agree with waiting in line for beer, because I can get pretty much the same exact beer from any local brewery. Not the same exact beer, but really good high quality beer without waiting in line for it. Yeah. I know you've waited in line in the past for some Bissell Brother and dinner and some of the really hard to get stuff. And part of waiting in line is to get trade equity, right? Like you want to get something that somebody's willing to trade you things you can't get. But what's your opinion on, with the amount of beer that's out there in the world, the amount of microbreweries that are within 100 miles of your house nowadays, of waiting in line for 4 packs or a case of beer? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I have a few thoughts on it. I think part of it is the evolution of the craft beer drinker, right? So when I started off, I was still learning a lot. I knew enough about what I liked and so on, but some of it was just the excitement of being around people who knew about beer and getting to hang out with them and check out new stuff that was really fresh. The main beer scene was still kind of growing a few years back. It had a lot of momentum, but it was, you know, I remember when I could walk into Bissell Brothers and pick up a case of whatever I wanted, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, so now there's a limit, and then now we're sold out by noon, and then it was now there's a line. And so over time, I've kind of become less fond of standing in those lines. I think the other side of it is too, the availability, like you said, the availability of really good beer has just exploded. I think in Maine we have almost 100 craft breweries, or we're approaching that anyway, in a state of 1.5 million people or something like that. So I can drive 5 minutes to the local bottle shop and pick up a lot of really good stuff. Craft distribution has grown considerably up here. We have a really cool craft distribution company who specializes in Maine craft beer now, and the lines are considerably less attractive than they used to be for me. I think there's still some attraction to it, right? Dinner, Maine Beer Company Dinner, was at one point the #1 beer on Beer Advocate. It's a solid beer. I have good buddies who say, hey, can you go and get this for me? I really want it. And even though it's not a big deal to me, I still go and do it for them. And it is neat kind of getting to talk with some of those people of mine. I've met some really cool people that I still talk to from out of state that have come in to check out the Maine beer scene. So I think there's a certain amount of that is kind of neat, and that I get to experience what they're excited about, and that we're so lucky to have the beer scene that we do here in Maine, to kind of be an ambassador for that and show them that we're continuing to grow it and be excited about it. But for me, it's definitely, the excitement's gone, man. I don't, especially early morning in the cold. I remember being out at a dinner release at like 5:30 in the morning with Ben, who, those of you who don't know us, Ben is our other former business partner who helped me co-found Love of Beer, standing out in like January behind Maine Beer Company at like 5:30 in the morning, all bundled up, just freezing to death. And I'm thinking, this beer is not that good, dude. It's not that good. But,
Right.
It's certainly a culture. There's a ton of people that do it. I think there's a lot of cool connections that are made there. I have mixed feelings on the whole thing. So how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, so typically I'm trashing people that sit and wait in line. I've done it, though. I did it for Founders KBS a few years back. That's actually where I met our mutual friend, Jeff, who you trade with quite a bit. So I do understand what you're saying, right? Like, I meet other people that are that also enjoy the same thing I do, which is finding good, rare beers. So there's something to that. There is some camaraderie. We're meeting up with Jeff and a friend of mine who's coming up from Boston who loves Trillium and all that. So we're going to all get together at 6:30 a.m. and we're all bringing a couple beers that we've been dying to share with other people. So there's a little bit of that. I get that side of it, but I'm dreading getting up at, I'm going to have to get up at 5 and get ready and get down there, and it's going to be cold. I am excited to get some other half beer and be able to share that with my friends. But, and this is no offense to any brewery, it's not other half or anyone else, I do really think that within the, whatever I have here now, 12 to 15 breweries within 15 minutes of my house,
Right.
I do think that I can get just a high quality beer without waiting in line for it. Just show up any given day and get a super good IPA. Even though I don't live in New England now, people are doing juicy New England style IPAs. Yeah, so I'm kind of conflicted on waiting in line as well as you are. I do like it when other people wait in line, though, because there's certain beers that I love to get, whether it's for trade equity, whether it's for the showmanship of saying that you have it, which is also a nice cocky thing that you like to do once in a while. Absolutely. I love when you send me Swish, and other people love it too, and it's a karma thing. I bring that to a party. People remember me, and they're like, dude, I'm going to save this beer for when I see Aaron next, because he hooked me up with something I can't get otherwise. So yeah. I get it. You're putting stock in your beer collection to then acquire something else later. It's always about future acquisitions. And everybody loves what they can't get their hands on, right? Like, amen. Well, it might not actually taste any better. It feels better.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember that first bottle of Pliny, right? Like, I was first getting into IPA, and it was all the big whales, right? Hetty and Pliny and all the kind of staple, really overhopped, beat the shit out of your mouth with hops beer. I was lucky enough this summer to get out west and actually go to Russian River, and the magic's worn off. Don't get me wrong, it was awesome, but I was not excited about Pliny as much as I was excited about some really rare sour bottle they had that they'd been cellaring for 3 years and all that stuff. And cheers to them for producing good marketing. right? They're producing demand, they're producing a culture, they're producing the things that make us excited about this. One of my favorite things about craft beer, I was a wino before I really learned a whole lot about beer, and there's so much snobbery in that culture. And the craft beer culture is a bunch of people who just get along. Like, I'll turn around and talk to anybody and they're happy to talk to me. And whether or not I want to get up and do that early in the morning when it's cold now, I think that that is a kind of crucial part of this whole culture, people getting together and hanging out, meeting each other, and being excited about something that they share a commonality in. And whether or not I'm going to do it, I'm excited that they still do it. And I'm excited it creates hype and it draws tourism to different areas, and it's attainable. There's no bull around it. It's people just hanging out together and being excited about beer.
Yeah, I will say there is a little bit of snobbery in the beer culture. I don't love it
there for sure. Yeah,
amen.
Amen.
There is some of it, and some of it comes up. This is actually a great segue into another topic that we have for the day. I see it a lot. I don't really see it that much in person, to be honest. When I'm hanging out at beer events or hanging out with other beer geeks, I don't call us beer snobs because I just hate that term snob. Yeah. When I'm hanging out with other beer geeks, I don't see the snobbery the way I do online, right? I'm in a bunch of different beer groups, local beer groups, all kinds of ones, and following on Instagram and all that. This last week, actually, the Goose Island Bourbon County Stout was released, and the comments, man, like, some guy would post how excited he is to go get in line and grab this beer. He's got tickets or whatever, however the stores are doing it. Guy's super excited, and you just see comments of people just ripping this guy apart, right? Like, oh, you're drinking AB InBev, or that stuff's junk, or all this stuff. So there is a little bit of douchery, snobbery within at least the online side of the culture, which I don't love.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you hear it in lines too. It's, well, you know, I got this whatever special beer, blah blah blah. And don't get me wrong, it's exciting to get that, but let's not listen, all you beer people. We're all together here. Let's not let this devolve from what the magic that it is. I love the approachability of what beer is currently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had a couple Bourbon County Stouts. It's not something that I'm gonna go get in line for, as much as I love stouts. Sure. I'm not going to go get in line for it personally, but I understand why people want to do it, whether it's an AB InBev company or whether it was a local startup, two guys brewing together and got that recognition. So I do think it is a little bit of an overrated beer from the ones I've tried. I think one of the ones I had was one of their bad years, which has happened in the past where they just had bad batches. So to me, it seems like a little bit of an overrated beer, but do you think it's fair to judge a beer like that based on the company that owns the beer versus the actual quality of the beer?
I mean, that's a loaded question. And, you know, I think you and I have touched on this in the past. It's craft beer versus good beer, right? And this whole, and coming back to the snobbery thing, good beer is good beer, man. Like, I grew up on Pabst Blue Ribbon, you know. You can't, I don't think you can just not buy something or not drink something simply because it's produced by a company that's larger or a company that's sold, or, you know, whatever the conditions may be. Is AB a conversation that we should have? Absolutely. Is how the control of the market happens a conversation we should have? Absolutely. Should you make purchases based around that? Maybe. I don't know the answer to that. I think that's debatable around that. But should you not buy Bourbon County Stout if you like it simply because AB owns a company? I got a hard time with that. I mean, let's face it, distribution in this country still sits on a really old set of laws that's controlled by big companies that get beer to where it's going. And, you know, we'll talk about other companies that face that challenge as well, or have faced that challenge and have ultimately sold out. I think this is a hot topic, and I think it needs to be talked about more. A lot of our brewers, almost exclusively in Maine, there's maybe 3 that are big enough to be mass distributed. Those guys are passionate about not letting the scene, not letting their own success destroy the quality of what they're producing, or destroy the movement that's happening. But at the same time, I want to see one of those guys get offered $50 million and see what they say to that. The idea behind building a business is making money. And does that mean you sacrifice your morals? No, but it's a really loaded topic, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, so I agree it's a loaded topic, and I don't have to answer to it. I do try when people talk about it in these groups that I mentioned and things like that. I try to shed some light into the other side and play a little bit of devil's advocate in that not all acquisitions are bad either, right? Founders, for instance, they gave up 35% of their company to a larger, not AB InBev, but a larger entity, beverage entity.
Right.
And because of the recent changes to the rules from the Craft Beer Association, it pushed them out of the craft beer conversation. Founders is still one of my favorite breweries.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
They make one of my all-time favorite beers, and I've never had a stout as good as their just standard breakfast stout.
Yeah.
As far as consistency. And since they did that sale, nothing's actually changed except for their distribution grew, so more people can get it. Which that's kind of where my argument lies. Is I'm all about sharing good beer with people, and there was a while where my friends on the East Coast couldn't get a lot of Founder stuff, and so yeah, but you're gonna soon, right? They're expanding all over the nation. So for me, it's a little bit of that too. Is some of these guys aren't ever going to grow. Some of those guys are holding on to their culture and holding on to that. We're going to be craft till we die, which is great. I'm not knocking that. If that's the model you want to take for your business,
sure,
absolutely go for it.
Yeah.
But if somebody else is making really good beer and they're struggling, if you listen to the story of Founders, I think they almost went bankrupt twice or something like that. Like they put every last dollar, every bit of sweat into that company. And then 10 years later, they started to see some form of success and built up around this craft beer boom. And then they saw an opportunity to get a minority owner. They still own the majority. That's the other thing, is that they still have a majority ownership of the company.
Controlling share. Yeah.
The same brewer that came up with all these recipes is still the head brewer of the company. They've just scaled to a level where they can supply national demand.
Right.
So for me, it's also about getting the beer out there. I see the side of why it would be intriguing for Joe the brewer, who's been working his butt off for a lot of years. I know a lot of brewers, and they don't get paid great money sometimes to be an assistant brewer or something like that, and it's hard work. I've gone in and brewed for a day with some of these guys. It's not easy work to brew.
Yeah.
When I'm brewing homebrew, I'm just drinking it brewing. It's 5 gallons, no big deal.
Yeah.
When you're brewing a large scale,
you're doing it once in a while. I mean, these guys are doing this 8, 10, 12 hours a day, every day.
All the time. Large scale. It's messy work. 80% of it's cleaning stuff.
Yeah.
So I understand after, say, 10 years of that and you're not gaining traction and somebody comes through with a giant check and says, hey, we're going to toss you whatever it is, 30 million, 40, $100 million, and we're going to relieve some of that pressure for you. And you can just get creative and just keep making good beer and we'll worry about the rest. I understand how that could be intriguing. So
yeah, and I mean, let's talk consistency for a second. I actually had a sales rep point out to me a really good point. He said, if you look at these, single tank beers, say it's a 30 barrel or 45 barrel, 60 barrel tank, you see these huge fluctuations between each brew. And as a brewery gets bigger, you see more consistency because they're blending between tanks and all that stuff. Some of these breweries are not going to have the available capital to expand to a point where they can create that sort of consistency. And I mean, if you look at Bissell Brothers Substance, for example, from the day it came out, from the first can I had of that to today, they are, night and day different beers. And part of that is just the evolution of hop shortages and yeast changes and everything else that comes with kind of a living product. But the other side of it is they're producing a single tank at a time. Maybe 2 tanks max, but I don't even know if they're blending it. I'm kind of speculating there, but Peter Bissell, who is their kind of spokesperson, has come out in the media, so I feel comfortable saying this and saying, we want beer to be a community project. We feel like it ensures the best quality of the product that we're delivering to the consumer, and we will never distribute out of state. We will never distribute out of state. we'll see how that goes. Give it another 24 months. What happens then? Maybe they stick to their guns. Those guys are really solid on sticking to their guns. They produce an awesome product, and there's a certain amount of, if there's less supply than there is demand, you're always the magical product, right? And they produce an incredible product. They always have. They lead a lot of charges in our main beer scene, and have an immense amount of respect for them. But you slap a big check down, or you start facing real quality issues, or whatever it may be. What happens then? It's a complex conversation.
Well, for them, they might be a little bit more protected in the fact that they're kind of a more of an outlier in the beer community, right? Because they're a cult beer thing, right? People travel from far away to go to Bissell Brothers to get in line. So their business model is protected as far
over
as
years too. Like the demand just continues, which is cool.
Yeah, right. So it's easy for him to say that, right? But some of these maybe smaller breweries, more struggling breweries. See, the thing is these larger companies are looking for really any craft beer to add to their portfolio, right? You just have to hit certain types of things. Like you have to produce decent beer and distribute maybe a little bit more than your state. But they're going to want to buy you up. And there's multiple. It's not just AB InBev. I know they're a conglomerate and manage a large portion of the market, but there's other ones. There's North American breweries. There's the Miller family. There's the one that just bought Avery beer, which is the same one that did Founders. It's Mahou San Miguel. I'm probably butchering that.
Is Avery out of Texas? Is that right?
No, they're out of Denver, Colorado. I think it's Denver.
Yeah. Anyway, well,
Boulder.
There was some company out of Texas, I believe, that was producing these huge packs of beer. I can't remember. Anyway, another day.
Yeah. Avery, still a really good beer company, right? And that's another one that was just getting ripped online. They sold, right now it's still a developing story because it just got released. But it sounds like they may have sold like 30% of their company, 31% of their company. And I saw people being like, oh man, what a shame. I can't drink Avery anymore. And it's like, I don't know, man, if you like the stuff, go out and buy it. I do get the idea that you want to support local business. I'm not saying don't do that. Like, don't continue to support the local market, but good for the Bissell Brothers if they want to stay and say, we're never moving out of the state. But I totally understand if one of these really good craft beers gets essentially a blank check, how much do you want, to put you under our flagship brand?
Yeah. And I think the bigger conversation is what's important here, right? I read a really good article about how Anheuser-Busch wanted brands not for the beer that they produce, but for the brand equity that they bring to the table. And in equating, I mean, Budweiser at one point, this sounds ridiculous, but was a premium beer. They were a premium beer, and now they're not a premium beer. And so it's about leveling that brand equity field to some extent to them, which is kind of messed up. And I think it's important to place the conversation on distribution and on quality and all those other things, and not so much on these small breweries who are, look, they're like you and me, man. They're just trying to make a business and be successful and do something they love. And is it sad to see somebody go? Yeah. Do I shame someone for selling a non-controlling share of their company though? I have a pretty hard time with that. Now, when we're talking buyout, when we talk about Wicked Weed, let's talk about Wicked Weed for a second. Sure. They had the huge sour festival that was coming up, and their buyout kind of destroyed that a little bit. That to me is a different thing. They were kind of the ambassador in their area for craft beer and had made some statements about craft beer and AB and all that. And I think again it comes back to that conversation about what's the goal, what are they trying to do, where's the real problem? The real problem is distributors blocking people out of taps, or completely destroying a brand after buyout or something like that. Is it really is the problem people selling a company to do well for themselves? I don't know that that's a fair conversation.
Yeah, and there is some of that, right? The bigger companies will buy you and bury you in their portfolio, and you're not competing for taps in that area anymore. There's definitely some of that to it. I was on the other side of that Wicked Weed one a little bit too. Again, not that I cared particularly because I never could get it anyway, so it might not hit as close to home as for me as it did some of the people that live around there and trust in that brewery. I think it's harder when you make claims, right? And kind of to what Bissell said is, now that you've made that claim, you really kind of stick to it, because that's where you start to lose a fan base, right?
Right.
You talk a big game and say, you know what, screw the big guy, we're never getting involved with those guys. But then they show up with a fat check and money talks, and you change your mind. I don't fault anyone for taking the money and going with it. Like I said, it's a lot of hard work, and they've poured all their own personal work and a lot of times their own equity. So I'm not going to be one to tell somebody what to do with something that they created and they put their own time equity and money equity into.
Sure.
It's a touchy subject for sure.
It really is. It really, and I think it's a complex subject. I think it's a subject that needs to happen in conversation amongst all of us. I think it's a much more complex conversation than AB buying out brands, right? If we're going to go down that road, people need to start talking about the distribution model. They need to talk about distribution law in this country and in each state. Most people don't know this, but if you sign with a distributor, you're signed for life with that distributor. Right. And they control taps. And, we'll touch on that more in future episodes. But this kind of, as with anything in social media, this tidal wave of hatred that happens to a brewery that sells out it's more complex of a conversation, I think, than what people allow to occur.
Yeah, I do think it gets emotional. And don't get me wrong, I don't love the big beer companies, and I don't love the bully system.
Nor do I. I was pissed when Wicked Weed got bought.
Sure. And I don't love you mentioned the distribution tiered system that we have. It's old mafioso style system that's just been in place forever. It's unfair to the little guy for sure. It definitely does not. I'm a big believer in fair market competition. It definitely is not that. A lot of people, with some of the hot topics in social media nowadays, we're talking about, level playing fields and things like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist right now in the beer industry. And so I understand why people get upset, because they're already battling against these big behemoth companies, and now they're just buying up the best of the best, right? In people's minds. So I do agree with you that the conversation needs to change with the state level and opening up the distribution networks. I know we'll talk about it a little bit. I know some of that's happening in Maine. I know some people are getting into self-distribution. Smaller breweries are opening up their own distribution to just, screw these guys, we're doing it ourselves. So some of that's forcing change.
Yeah. And some of that comes back to government, right? Like, I know that early on when tap rooms and distribution models wanted to be changed, all that law, Maine had to make a lot of shifts in the way that our laws are written to allow tap rooms to sell beer without food alongside it, or to allow them to load up their van with kegs, which is still what Bissell does now. The vans are much nicer and look much cooler. And I think they actually broke that business off and helped him get going with his own distribution. But some laws had to change to allow that to occur. And I think that's the nuance that's missed in this bigger conversation about AB and Miller and all these guys. Don't get me wrong, that they are their own set of problems, but there's a lot of government tape in the way as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do think it's changing. And if it's something that people that are listening have concerns about, I know you can, the Brewers Association is very active in that. You can go to the Brewers Association. I think if you become a member of the Brewers Association, or even the Home Brewers Association, those funds go towards fighting that legislative effort to rip down some of that red tape, get rid of those laws. They update pretty regularly of what laws are in place. I mean, there is some silly laws out there on the books still that just date back to Prohibition. Right here, I'm in New York. We've got a pretty good system with not our distribution networks, but like an old silly law that's on the books in other places that you see the Brewers Association fighting quite a bit is like growler fills and things like that. Here, right around the corner from my house, you can go, there's gas stations that have growler. They have like 6 taps and growler stations. You can bring your own growler, fill it up. Like no big deal, right? You would think you could do that anywhere. But Massachusetts, if you go to Trillium or you go to one of these places and you want to buy a growler to bring it home, you can't bring like your own growler that you bought online, your own stainless steel nice growler. Massachusetts law prevents you from doing that. You have to purchase a growler from that company and bring that home, which is what about laws like that, man? Like,
I know.
Maine has some stuff like that too, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I feel like it has changed. I think that was the case at one point, and I should probably research this and clarify, but I know there's some concern about that. I think there is some concern on the brewery part about quality of the growler that's coming in the door.
sure.
Has it been cleaned properly? Does the seal properly, or will it allow oxidation? So some brewers are a little bit more picky about that than others, I think. Yeah, each state law is super different. I mean, I remember one of my good buddies is from Massachusetts, and he kept talking about packies and not being able to buy booze on Sunday and things like that. And yeah, all of that stuff comes into play when you're talking about this conversation.
Yeah, and I do agree. I get the side of the brewer. I got 2 growlers behind me here. Those aren't clean. If I took them tomorrow to the brewery to fill, it would probably taste disgusting.
Right.
In my fridge for a day. There's probably some mold on the cap or something.
Yeah, sure.
I do clean my growlers. I want that to be known. If I show up to if any local brewers listen to this and I show up with a growler, I have growler cleaning tablets. I do clean them because I want my beer to taste good. I do know some of the places will clean them, just like around here, you can take your old corny kegs, the Pepsi kegs and stuff. You can take that, and some places will fill them, but they'll make sure that they're clean, like you said.
Yeah. Just create a rotation, something.
Yeah, I get the quality issue, and
Sure.
kind of to that point, we got a little bit of time here. Another question I wanted to pick your brain on, because I've talked to a bunch of brewers about this, and this is another one of those, a little bit lighter topic than distribution and AB and Bev and all that.
Sure, yeah.
But one that gets some people in a pickle a little bit here. So you've heard of like the randalizers.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So a lot of beer shops have those, places have them.
Yep.
A question that I pose often to brewers is, how do they feel? Like, some say, for instance, Joe's Brewery puts out a really nice stout, just like a common, whatever, oatmeal stout. And then Jimmy's Bottle Shop goes and throws candy canes and nutmeg and all this stuff in their randalizer, which is fine. People get excited. They put it on social media. People get excited. And they go nuts for it and go check it out. At what point is that at the point of purchase when that bottle shop buys your keg, do they have license to alter your product and then serve it to customers? Because that's a fine line too of what is getting to the end customer.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think is the short answer. The longer answer, again, gets into nuance about disclosure and all of that sort of thing. I think there are some brewers that would be painfully offended by somebody altering their product. But look, at the end of the day, it's like anything else that we buy. We buy phones or technology and we want to tweak it to our liking, or you buy meat at the local butcher shop. They're not telling you, no, dude, don't cook this past medium rare.
Right.
You can't control the product once it leaves your hands. Did you sell it legally to another organization? As long as they're not walking up to their bar and saying, yeah, Dogfish had endorsed us using their randalizer. They did the randalizer, I believe.
They do,
they endorsed us to add all this weird shit into this beer. Then we've got a real problem. Do I fault a bar who sells beer for making a specialized product to attract customers? No, absolutely not. And anybody who does, I think, is being again, it comes back to that snobbery of, look, man, someone decided to buy that product as is, as long as they didn't lie to the consumer and say, this is an endorsed idea. That's on the consumer to make that decision. Will consumers get a bad taste in certain cases? Yes, but that's a risk anyway. Let's talk about tap line cleanliness or temperature or ability to pour a proper pour or any number of other things that can so drastically affect your product. Once it leaves your facility, it's out of your control. Do I know that people bastardize beer? Without question. But
oh god, all the time.
Yeah.
But I know breweries just like that, and they're looking for ways to change that, right? They want to see. I know some breweries that go give education courses on glass cleanliness, on don't freeze mugs and serve beer in our fridge. Like, do that with Pabst. Don't do that with our beer. Like, don't put our beer in certain glassware. So I know breweries are conscious about it, and they're trying to educate people. And some breweries even hire guys that are cicerones or certified cicerone servers to go educate clients, the distributor, people like that, because they're so worried about it. So I do see that side though of, we put a lot of effort into making this beer taste a specific way. There's a lot of science that goes behind getting it to taste a certain way.
Absolutely.
So I understand that. Like you said, the tap line issue, that's one here in New York that's a super big issue. I know in Maine it's required. There's some health laws that require the distributor to clean lines. I worked in, as you know, a restaurant in Maine for years, and they would just come like clockwork every week, do our lines every 2 weeks or whatever, do the big rinse, do our lines. Here in New York, it's not required. And actually, you might find this interesting. The distributors aren't allowed to do it because it's considered a favor,
right?
And a service. So they're not allowed to do it because then they assume that they're like doing it in trade for a certain number of taps or whatever. But what it really affects the quality of beers.
Right.
A bunch of guys have started their own tap line cleaning services, and I'll tell you, man, they've told me some horror stories.
Oh, God,
about. I'm not going to name any places or anything like that, but they go in there and they start pulling out lines, and there's just soot and mold and all kinds of things because there's no regulation and control on that.
Right.
The breweries want it, right? So, kind of to what you're saying, like they can't control it once it goes out their door, but something needs to have some control. Because they want to put their beer out there. They want to get it in kegs. They want to do all that stuff. But, if you're going to put it on a line. So like, for instance, when I first moved here, we went out to dinner. I heard about a local brewery, ordered their stout, got it. It tasted horrible. Just god awful. I told the guy, I was like, I think your lines are dirty. This beer doesn't taste right. I'm pretty sure they didn't design it to taste like this.
Yeah. That's the nice way of saying it.
Yeah. I was like, do you mind? Like, but maybe I'm wrong. Can I get another one?
Sure.
They were cool. They got me another one. I was like, yeah, something's up. Like, you guys have something going wrong with your tap system.
Yeah.
But if I didn't know better, here's the thing. My wife tried it. She was like, this is disgusting, right? And she doesn't know that is due to cleanliness of the lines.
Sure.
That person might never try your beer again. And that's my concern, is if you have a bad experience, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that's a valid point. I think it comes back to, I was at Inbound, which is a big marketing conference that we go to every year for our day jobs that we have to go and do. And I sat in on a Google breakout session, and he said ultimately, which I thought was really good advice, every user problem is our problem as an organization, right? Like, we can't put that on the user. We can't put that on the middleware guy. We can't put that on anybody else. This problem is our problem. So how do we solve that problem? And I think that really the way to fix that is through education. This is what we expect from our beer. It should be at this temperature. It should be served this way. It should be this, that, and the other thing. Taking an active approach to educate your consumer and make them aware of what should be is the way to combat that. Are there going to be consumers who don't bother to educate themselves and try a beer in a poorly maintained line or through a randomizer or, whatever the conditions may be, that judge you? Yes, but that's the risk no matter what. I would say to any brewery who may stumble across this, educate your consumer. Take the time to educate your consumer and help them understand why their experience may not have been what you intended them to have. That's on you. That's on you as the producer, not on them as the consumer. Even though it's not something you can always control, that's a you problem. And I think the more that breweries go after it that way and say, hey, if you've had one of our products that didn't taste good, but you like that style of beer, try it again somewhere else. Buy it in a container. Buy it however you can buy it and give us another shot. Or if you're in a restaurant, this is what to look for. Or, any number of those conditions where you're actively trying to combat that.
Yeah, and I think some of that comes with taking a non-snobby approach to it, right? Like, when you get a bad beer, don't be a jerk about it. Just, because a lot of these people don't know better. They haven't had the experience. I remember when I first started bartending, I didn't know anything about beer. I didn't know anything about serving beer properly. The people that were teaching me how to do it didn't either. The distributors didn't do it either. This was a little bit pre the big boom that we've had in craft beer, but So don't take it out on the server or the bartender. They don't know any better, but do take an opportunity to maybe educate and be like, hey, guys, I think something's wrong with your tap line. And, if you know anyone in the beer community, let them know in a not jerk way, like, X restaurant is destroying X beer company, get that awareness up to somebody, because they do want to know. I guarantee you the brewers and the people that own the brewery want to know how their beer is being presented to the public.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you hit two big points there. Number one, don't be a dick, right? Like, and I think that's a motto of life, but especially with beer, let's not let this evolve or devolve into us acting like we're these snobs who get to just piss all over you because you didn't do something right. Let's help these businesses. Are you in a business that you like to frequent? Help them help serve their customer better, make them aware of the problem in a reasonable way, and see if they can help you solve that. Be vocal about it, but don't be a jerk about it.
Right. And I've seen people be a jerk about it. So, if anyone's listening to this and they run into that issue, just try to remember, these people don't know any better sometimes, and they're not as into the beer as you are. They might not even drink beer. There's still a lot of people that don't.
Right.
So, just try to create awareness, try to, get that information back to people within the beer industry, and just let them know, hey, there's an issue somewhere. Because I do think at the end of the day, as far as, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, that I want what's best for beer culture. And I go to places and talk to people. I go to a lot of beer parties, and there will always be that one person that's like, well, I don't drink beer, I'm just here with my friend or whatever. And I don't rag on them. I see everyone's like, you don't drink beer, like, who are you? I take a moment. Yeah, I take a moment to be like, well, what do you drink, right? And then talk to them and be like, well, you might like a lambic, or you might like, you try to find a style to them. But if we make it as a group, more of an approachable thing than closing people off. I know once you're in it, it's very approachable and everyone wants to share with you. But I think to outsiders, including this, conversation we're talking about, when people mess something up, to outsiders in the industry or in the culture, we come off kind of as dicks sometimes. So let's stop being dicks.
Yeah, amen. And I think that was it. We just had a bottle share a couple of weeks ago for Love of Beer, and I think it's illustrative. People bring new people who just want to get out and do something, but aren't really big beer fans. And they say that, I don't like beer.
Right.
There's how many styles of beer. There's how many variants of those styles of beer. You do like beer. You just haven't tried the beer that you like yet. And I think that attitude turns people off to the culture. And if you really are a craft beer person, you care about the local breweries, and you care about the local distributors, and you care about the people in this industry, be an ambassador. Help educate them on.
Right.
There are so many different styles and tastes and this and that and the other thing. Instead of, well, I can't believe you don't, it's just, let's lose this attitude, man. It's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, even within styles, right? Like New England IPA is a lot different than a West Coast IPA, right?
Absolutely.
And those styles are tough for a lot of people that have never had beer before. It's a super bitter taste. Even a lot of the stouts I like are super heavy bitter.
Yeah.
So you try to know this, that, talk to people. And I guarantee you, I always say this, there is a beer for everybody.
Yeah.
Whether or not they want to try it or not, that's up to them. But I enjoy getting to the bottom of it, finding out their style profiles and their taste, and say, what, maybe you should try, a sour. It's not for everybody, but it sounds like you might like it. You like some other things that have similar tastes, because the spectrum of flavors is all over the place.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's huge. Yeah.
So on that note, we should probably wrap it up here. We could keep going on and on, but we have other shows to fill. So I appreciate anyone that did come out and watch this. So just so anyone knows that's listening on any of the podcast networks, we do stream this live on YouTube, where you can interact with us through the chat box. I always have the chat box open. Our good friend that you mentioned, Ben, was in there chatting with us a little bit, joining the show. So come on in. You can chat with us. I do keep the chat box open. What I'd like to do is towards the end of episodes, once we get this rolling, is have a little bit of a question and answer, as we have guests, so people can interact with us. I think that's going to be a big thing for our podcast here, some interaction. Grab a beer, come join us while we drink a beer, and just, talk about something that we really love, that we're passionate about, the craft beer industry. So anyone listening on the podcast, follow us on YouTube. You can find it. The channel is loveof.beer. It'll be posted in our videos and on the podcast description. So definitely check that out. And keep an eye, like I said earlier in the podcast, on Love of Beer. Matt's doing a bunch of great stuff over there. And I know he's rolling out another video series on his other Love of Beer channel. So there's going to be some cool content coming out from those guys. Matt works with a bunch of great guys at Patra who do some incredible stuff with video. So I'm excited to see what type of content they come up with here for Matt's Love of Beer organization.
Yeah.
Anything you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, we got some fun stuff coming over there, different content events and so on. A couple things. Aaron runs a division of our organization. He runs the Western New York division. If you're interested in starting your own beer group, let us know. Love of Beer grew out of a community project. We just want to get people together to promote and enjoy this industry, and we'll do all your promotion for you. We'll help you organize it. We'll help you figure things out. We don't charge people for that. So let us know on that. Definitely stay tuned on the other stuff too. But if you want the raw experience, if you want the real people and not the kind of culture and scripted, whatever, this is the place to find it. I'm stoked to be on here with you. And I'm sure we'll have some good debates about how IPA is so much better than stout. And yeah, I'm stoked to be doing this. If you're listening right now, thanks for listening. Stay tuned. We got a ton of good stuff coming. So
yeah, absolutely. And kind of to piggyback on Matt's point, I am doing the one here. We haven't done a lot lately. We did a couple tastings here at my house, which was a ton of fun. So if you have beer friends, I just started a Facebook group and invited a bunch of my friends I know love doing tastings, because I hoard beers and sometimes I'll have a big bottle and I don't want to drink it all by myself. I know it sounds weird. I want to share it with friends. So everybody this time last year, we got a plethora of holiday beers and just had a big holiday beer, Christmas beer extravaganza at my house. It was a blast. We still talk about it to this day. So hit up Matt if you want to start that and have the Love of Beer organization kind of behind you. And it's a ton of fun, and we can share ideas on how to share beer with each other. I'd love to hear your guys' ideas on that. So yeah, find them, look it up. Matt's on Facebook and Instagram with Love of Beer. You're not on Twitter, right? With Love of Beer, just those.
We're not on Twitter. Yeah, no, we try to do what we're good at, and it hasn't been a great platform. We are on Instagram. We're going to be much heavier presence on YouTube. We got some fun stuff. Hopefully we'll get Aaron in to debate with us. We're going to do pointless drunken debates about things like, is a fish wet? We got some other fun content coming, some more creative stuff. We got a couple guys in our video department that do some really creative, fun stuff. So they'll be bringing that to the table. We're doing events. We'd love to see these events spread. We're here for you guys. If you want us to help you, let us know how we can help you and help get your name out there and help you create your own community. That's what this is about, is community and hanging out together and drinking good beer. Yeah.
And that's a great segue here too. Ben, our friend Ben, asked us our first ever question here on Beer Talk Live. What's one great way craft beer has improved your lives? And kind of to talk about community, that's one for me really is I've worked in a store because of my love of craft beer, and I made a ton of great friends doing that. I homebrew, and that's a fun hobby, but one of the best parts of homebrewing has been the community associated to the homebrewing and talking to people that share a similar passion that I do, bottle collecting. So I've met a ton of great people, and for me, while I enjoy consuming beer by myself and love getting a buzz and all that stuff, the best part about being into craft beer and all the different phases, factions of where that can take you, is just the people you meet and the community around it. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think you nailed it head on. I really like beer. I don't drink it a lot by myself because to me it's a community thing. I think pubs were the center of communities at one point. I would love to see more of that and less of people living these isolated lives in social media, interacting, and a return to that would be good for our community in general. But yeah, that's what it is to me. It's about hanging out together, talking about different stuff, trying different beers, just spending time together. And I think that's it. I do want to say real quick, if Ben's still listening, Benny, you better get on here with us. Ben helped co-found Love a Beer with me. He's got some great insights and opinions too on this stuff. He's an entertaining guy, so I'm sure we'll see him on here at some point.
I did. I talked to him about it today, and I said, we got to get you on the show. So
absolutely.
Hoping we get Benny on here soon. This is probably been the longest outro of any podcast that I've ever been on. So
this is the first one. We got to figure it out, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I appreciate the conversation. I'm excited for some of the future episodes. Matt and I have talked about some of the guests we want to have on. So it won't just be Matt and I giving just our opinions. If you listen to this and thought we sounded like a couple of idiots, don't worry about it. There's other people that come on here.
Thank God, man. Yeah, we're not that interesting.
I think we have some cool guests that we're going to line up and some different phases of the beer industry, right? We're going to look at every aspect because the tentacles of the beer industry really touch a lot of different industries and a lot of different sub-industries and everybody that helps get craft beer into your glass and into your mouth. So we're going to try to get a bunch of those people on. But to wrap it up here, you can find us, Beer Talk Live, is on Twitter at Beer Talk Live Pod. On Instagram, same thing, at Beer Talk Live Pod. Come follow us over there, chat. We're on Facebook. You can find our Facebook group. We don't have enough followers yet to have a name on Facebook, so help us out with that. Get it, come give us a like. But you can find us by looking it up, Beer Talk Live. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. That's a great way to check us out, and you'll get notified when we go live. It'll pop right up on your phone when we go live if you're interested in that. You don't have to. And then you will be finding us on your podcast network soon. We can't get on until we record a podcast on iTunes and all that. But this is it. We're recording a podcast, so you'll be able to find us. We are on Podbean. So as soon as this episode wraps up, we'll be up on Podbean. So subscribe to us, like us, review us, and just comment, chat. You don't have to agree with us. Get in the chat. We just want an active community that's talking about the thing that we love the most. So on behalf of my friend Matt Carr here, my name's Aaron Quinn. Thank you for listening to the first ever episode of Beer Talk Live presented by loveof.beer.